When Ananda and the Great Assembly heard the Buddha's instruction, their doubts and delusion were dispelled. Their minds awakened to the actual appearance. They experienced light ease, both physically and mentally, and they obtained what they had never had before. Once again he wept, bowed at the Buddha's feet, knelt on both knees, placed his palms together and said to the Buddha, "The unsurpassed, great, compassionate, pure and precious King has instructed me well, so that by means of these various causes and conditions, expedients and encouragement, all of us who were immersed in the sea of suffering have escaped it." World-honored one, having heard the sound of Dharma like this, I know that the treasury of the Thus Come One, the wonderful enlightened, bright mind, pervades the 10 directions and includes the Thus Come One, the lands of the 10 directions, and the pure, precious adornments of the land of the wonderfully enlightened King. Yet the Thus Come One once again admonishes that erudition is of no merit and is not as good as cultivation. So now I'm like a wanderer who suddenly encounters a reigning king, who bestows upon him an elegant house. He has obtained a mansion, but there needs to be a door in order for him to enter it. I only hope the Thus Come One will not withhold his great compassion in instructing those of us in the assembly who are covered over by darkness, so that we may renounce the small vehicle and attain at last the Thus Come One's nirvana without residue, the fundamental path of resolve, and that he will enable those who still must study to know now how to subdue the age-old seeking of advantage from conditions, to obtain dharani, and to enter into the knowledge and vision of the Buddha. Having said this, he made a full prostration, and together with the members of the assembly, he single-mindedly awaited the Buddha's compassionate instruction. The world-honored one then took pity on the sound hearers and the conditioned enlightened ones in the assembly, all those who were not yet at ease with the body mind, and on all living beings to come after the Buddha's extinction during the Dharma ending age. He revealed the wonderful path of cultivation of the unsurpassed vehicle. He proclaimed to Ananda and to the great assembly, if you want to have decisive resolve for Bodhi and not grow weary of the wonderful samadhi of the Buddha, the Thus Come One, you must first understand the 2 resolutions regarding initial resolve for enlightenment. What are the 2 resolutions regarding initial resolve for enlightenment? Ananda, the first resolution is this: if you wish to renounce the position of sound hearer and cultivate the bodhisattva vehicle, and to enter the knowledge and vision of the Buddha, you must carefully consider whether the resolve on the cause ground and the enlightenment on the ground of fruition are the same or different. Ananda, it is impossible, while on the cause ground, to use the mind subject to production and extinction as the basis for cultivating in quest of the Buddha vehicle, which is neither produced nor extinguished. For this reason, you should realize that all existing dharmas in the material world will decay and disappear. Ananda, contemplate the world. What thing is there that will not waste away? But has anyone ever heard of the disintegration of the void? Why not? It is because the void does not exist, and so it can never be destroyed. While you are in your body, what is solid is of earth, what is moist is of water, what is warmth is of fire, and what moves is of wind. Because of these 4 bonds, you are tranquil and perfect wonderfully enlightened bright mind divides into seeing, hearing, sensation, and cognition. From beginning to end, there are the 5 layers of turbidity. What is meant by turbidity? Ananda, pure water, for instance, is fundamentally clear and clean, whereas dust, dirt, ashes, silt, and the like are basically solid substances. Such are the properties of the two. Their natures are not compatible. Suppose, then, that an ordinary person takes some dirt and tosses it into the pure water. The dirt loses its solid quality, and the water is deprived of its transparency. The cloudiness which results is called turbidity. Your 5 layers of turbidity are similar to it. Ananda, you see that emptiness pervades the 10 directions. There is no division between emptiness and seeing. However, although emptiness has no substance and your seeing has no awareness, the two becomes entangled in a falseness. This is the first layer, called the turbidity of time. Your body appears in full, with the 4 elements composing its substance, and from these, seeing, hearing, sensation, and cognition become firmly defined. Water, fire, wind, and earth fluctuate between sensation and cognition and become entangled in a falseness. This is the second layer, called the turbidity of views. Further, the functions of memory, discrimination, and verbal comprehension in your mind bring into being knowledge and views. From out of them appear the 6 defiling objects. Apart from the defiling objects, there are no appearances. Apart from cognition, they have no nature, but they become entangled in a falseness. This is the third layer, called the turbidity of afflictions. And then day and night, there is endless production and extinction, as your knowledge and views continually wish to remain in the world, while your karmic patterns constantly move you to various places. This entanglement becomes a falseness, which is the 4th layer, called the turbidity of living beings. Originally, your seeing and hearing were not different natures, but a multitude of defiling objects has divided them, until suddenly they became different. Their natures have a mutual awareness, but their functions are in opposition. Sameness and difference arise, and they lose their identity. This entanglement becomes a falseness, which is the 5th layer, called the turbidity of a lifespan. Ananda, you now want to cause your seeing, hearing, sensation, and cognition to return to and tally with the permanence, bliss, true self, and purity of the thus come one. You should first decide what the basis of birth and death is by relying on the perfect, tranquil nature which is neither produced nor extinguished. By means of this tranquillity, turn the empty and false production and extinction so that they are subdued and return to the source of enlightenment. The attainment of this source of bright enlightenment, which is neither produced nor extinguished, is the mind on the coarse ground. Then you can completely accomplish the cultivation of and certification to the ground of fruition. It is like purifying muddy water by placing it in a quiet vessel, which is kept completely still and unmoving. The sand and silt settle, and the pure water appears. This is called the initial subduing of the gas dust affliction. The complete removal of the mud from the water is called the eternal severance of fundamental ignorance. When clarity is pure to its essence, then no matter what happens, there is no affliction. Everything is in accord with the pure and wonderful virtues of nirvana. The second resolution is this: if you definitely wish to bring forth the resolve for Bodhi, and to be especially courageous and dedicated in your cultivation of the Bodhisattva vehicle, you must decisively renounce all conditioned appearances. You should carefully consider the origin of affliction and the beginningless creation of karma and perpetuation of rebirth, who creates it and who endures it. Ananda, if in your cultivation of Bodhi you do not carefully consider the origin of affliction, you cannot realize the empty falseness of the sense organs and sense objects, or the location of delusion. If you don't even know its location, how can you subdue it and reach the level of the Das Kam One? Ananda, consider the ordinary person who wants to untie a knot. If he can't see where the knot is, how can he untie it? But I've never heard that one can obliterate empty space. Why? It is because emptiness has no form or appearance, therefore there are no knots to untie. But now your visible eyes, ears, nose, and tongue, as well as your body and mind, are like 6 thieving matchmakers who plunder the jewels of your household. And thus, from beginningless time, living beings and the world have been bound up together, so that the material world cannot be transcended. Ananda, what is meant by the time and space of living beings? Time refers to change and flow. Space refers to location. You should know by now that north, east, south, west, northeast, northwest, southeast, and southwest, above and below, are space. Past, present, and future are periods of time. There are 10 directions in space and 3 periods of time. All living beings come into being because of false interaction. Their bodies go through changes and they're caught up in time and space. However, although there are 10 directions in space, those known in the world as north, south, east, and west are the only ones that can be clearly fixed. Above and below have no position. The intermediates have no definite direction. Determined clearly to be 4 in number, they are then combined with the 3 periods of time. 3 times 4, or alternately 4 times 3, make 12. Increase it 3 times, itself multiplied by 10, and again by 10, to reach the thousands. 1,200 is the greatest possible efficacy of the 6 organs. Ananda, you can thereby establish their value. For example, the eyes see darkness behind and light in front. The front is totally light, the back is totally dark. With your peripheral vision included, you can see 2/3 around at most. Therefore, its capacity can be expressed as an efficacy which is not complete. 1/3 of its efficacy is without virtue. Know then that the eyes have an efficacy of only 800. For example, the ears hear everywhere in the 10 directions without loss. They hear movements, whether far or near, and stillness without bounds. Know then that the organ of hearing is complete with an efficacy of 1200. For example, the nose smells odors with each inhalation and exhalation of the breath. It is deficient at the point between the inhalation and exhalation. The organ of smell can be considered to be deficient by 1/3. Know then that the nose has an efficacy of only 800. For example, the tongue can proclaim the entirety of worldly and transcendental wisdom. Although language varies according to locality, the principles go beyond boundaries of any kind. Know then that the organ of tongue is complete with an efficacy of 1200. For example, the body is aware of touch, registering it as pain or pleasure. When it makes contact, it is aware of the thing touched. When in isolation, it has no tactile knowledge of other things. Isolation has a single, and contact has a dual aspect. The organ of the body can be considered as deficient by 1/3. Know then that the body has an efficacy of only 800. For example, the mind silently includes all worldly and transcendental dharmas of the 10 directions and the 3 periods of time, regardless of whether it be sagely or ordinary. Everything is included in its boundlessness. Know then that the organ of the mind is complete with an efficacy of 1200. Ananda, now you wish to oppose the flow of desire that leads to birth and death. You should turn back the flow of the organs to reach a state of neither production nor extinction. You should investigate all of these 6 functioning organs to see which are uniting, which are isolated, which are deep, which are shallow, which will penetrate perfectly, and which are not perfect. Once you have awakened to the organ which penetrates perfectly, you should thereupon reverse the flow of its beginningless involvement in false karma. Then you will know the difference between one that penetrates perfectly and one that does not. Then a day and an aeon will be one and the same. I've now revealed to you the fundamental efficacy of the tranquil, perfect brightness of these 6. This is what the numbers are. It is up to you to select which one to enter. I will explain more to aid your progress in it. The thus come ones of the 10 directions, cultivated by means of all of the 18 realms, and obtain perfect, unsurpassed body. All of them were generally adequate. But you are at an inferior level and are not yet able to perfect comfortable wisdom among them. Therefore, I shall give you an explanation so that you will be able to enter deeply into one door. Enter one without falseness, and the 6 sense organs will be simultaneously pure. Ananda said to the Buddha, World-honored one, how do we oppose the flow, enter deeply into one door, and cause the 6 organs to simultaneously become pure? The Buddha told Ananda, you have already obtained the fruition of Ashotapana. You have already extinguished the view delusions of living beings in the 3 realms, but you do not yet know that your organs have accumulated habits that are without beginning. It is through cultivation that one severs not simply these habits, but also their numerous subtleties as they pass through arisal, dwelling, change, and extinction. You should now contemplate the 6 organs further. Are they 1 or 6? If you say they are 1, Ananda, why can't the ears see? Why can't the eyes hear? Why can't the head walk? Why can't the feet talk? If the 6 organs are definitely 6, then as I now explain this subtle, wonderful Dharma door for you in this assembly, which of your 6 organs is receiving it? Ananda said, I hear it with my ears. The Buddha said, your ears hear by themselves. What does that have to do with your body and mouth? And yet you ask about the principles with your mouth, and your body displays veneration. Therefore, you should know that if they are not one, then they must be six. And if they are not six, they must be one. But you can't say that your organs are basically one and six. Ananda, you should know that these organs are neither one nor six. It is from being upside down and sinking into involvements throughout time without beginning that the theory of one and six has become established. As a Shotapana, you have dissolved the six, but you still have not done away with the one. It is like emptiness fitting into differently shaped vessels. The emptiness is said to be whatever shape the vessel is, but if you get rid of the vessel and look at the emptiness, you will see it is one and the same. But how can that emptiness become alike and different at your convenience? Even less can it be one or not one. Therefore, you should understand that the six receptive functioning organs should be the same way. Seeing occurs because the two appearances of darkness and light and their like firmly adhere to quietude in what originally was wonderful perfection. The essence of seeing reflects form and combines with form to become an organ. In its pure state, the organ of the eye is the four elements, and yet it takes the name eye organ and is shaped like a grape. Of the superficial sense organs and the four defiling objects, this one raises out of the form. Hearing occurs because the two reverberations of movement and stillness and their like firmly adhere to quietude in what originally was wonderful perfection. The essence of hearing reflects sound and resounds with sound to become the organ of the ear. In its pure state, the organ of the ear is the four elements. It takes the name ear organ and is shaped like a fresh curled leaf. Of the superficial sense organs and the four defiling objects, this one is loosed upon sound. Smelling occurs because the two appearances of penetration and obstruction and their like firmly adhere to quietude in what originally was wonderful perfection. The essence of smelling reflects sense and takes in sense to become the organ of the nose. In its pure state, the organ of the nose is the four elements. It takes the name nose organ and is shaped like a double hanging claw. Of the superficial sense organs and the four defiling objects, this one probes out after sense. Tasting occurs because the two blends of blandness and variety and their like firmly adhere to quietude in what originally was wonderful perfection. The essence of tasting reflects flavors and becomes entwined with flavors to become the organ of the tongue. In its pure state, the organ of the tongue is the four elements. It takes the name tongue organ and is shaped like the crescent moon. Of the superficial sense organs and the four defiling objects, this one pursues flavors. Sensation occurs because the two frictions of separation and union and their like firmly adhere to quietude in what originally was wonderful perfection. The essence of sensation reflects contact and seizes upon contact to become the organ of the body. In its pure state, the organ of the body is the four elements. It takes the name of body organ and is shaped like a tabla. Of the superficial sense organs and the four defiling objects, this one is compelled by contact. Knowing occurs because the two continuities of production and extinction and their like firmly adhere to quietude in what originally was wonderful perfection. The essence of knowing reflects dharmas and grabs dharmas to become the organ of the mind. In its pure state, the organ of the mind is the four elements. It takes the name mental cognition and resembles seeing in a dark room. Of the superficial sense organs and their four defiling objects, this one chases after dharmas. Ananda. In this way, the six organs occur, because that bright enlightenment has a brightness added to it. Thus they lose their essence and adhere to falseness and create light. Therefore, apart from darkness and light, there is no substance to seeing for you now. Apart from movement and stillness, there basically is no disposition of hearing. Without penetration and obstruction, the nature of smelling does not arise. In the absence of variety and blandness, tasting does not occur. Lacking separation and union, the sensation of contact is fundamentally non-existent. Without extinction and production, knowing is put to rest. You need only not follow the 12 conditioned appearances of movement and stillness, union and separation, blandness and variety, penetration and obstruction, production and extinction, and brightness and darkness. Accordingly, extract one organ from adhesion, free it, and subdue it at its inner core. Once subdued, it will return to inherent truth and radiate its innate brilliance. When that brilliance shines forth, the remaining 5 adhesions will be freed to accomplish total liberation. Do not follow the knowing and seeing that arise in response to the objects before you. True brightness does not comply with the sense organs, yet lodged at the organs is the revelation of the brightness that permits the mutual functioning of the 6 organs. Ananda, don't you know that now, in this assembly, there is Aniruddha who is blind and yet can see, the dragon Upananda who is deaf and yet can hear, the spirit of the Ganges river who has no nose and yet smells fragrance, Gavampati who has an unusual tongue and yet senses flavor, and the spirit Sunyata who has no body and yet is aware of contact. In the light of the dusk come one. The spirit is illumined temporarily as an ethereal essence without any substance. In the same way, there is also Mahakashapa in this assembly, dwelling in the samadhi of extinction. Having obtained the stillness of a sound hearer, he has long since extinguished the mind organ, and yet he has a perfectly clear knowledge which is not due to the mental process of thinking. Then Ananda, after all your organs are completely free, you will glow with an inner light. All the ephemeral, defiling objects and the material world will thereupon change their appearance like ice, which is melted by hot liquid. In response to your mind, they will transform and become the knowledge and awareness which is unsurpassed enlightenment. Ananda, it is like an ordinary person who has confined seeing to his eyes. Ask him to close his eyes, and he will immediately see darkness before him. The 6 organs and his head and feet will be enveloped in total darkness. If the person traces the shape of external things with his hands, then even though he cannot see, he will recognize someone's head and feet if he feels them. This knowledge and awareness are the same way. If light is the condition requisite for seeing, then darkness brings the absence of seeing. But to perceive without light means that no dark manifestation can obscure the seeing. Once the organs and objects are eradicated, how can the enlightened brightness not become perfect and wonderful?